So there's going to be quite a lot of overlap between what Ian just spoke about and some of the concepts from this morning. So Max talking about demand-driven and also customer-centric and really about user value. So this is really our take on how we've applied all these techniques in terms of a data-driven product development approach. Just a bit about me. My title is actually Principal Business Analyst, but I'm going to speak more about the product owner side of my role. So I'm product owner for SSRN, which is the product within Elsevier myself and Liz work on. And really, SSRN is an online pre-print repository where researchers can surface their working papers early for feedback. And it fits into the Elsevier research products portfolio, products such as Mendeley, Science Direct, and Pure. So we're going to be focusing on some of the examples around those. And here's what we're going to be talking about. So we're going to be talking about the big question: how can we deliver better products to our customers? And some of how we've used that question, how we've solved the problem, using our experiment pipeline and Canvas as well. Liz is going to talk more about how UX is embedded into our approach, and I'm going to show you some of the example experiments and how we've applied some of our thinking here. So I was recently at a product conference, and one of the speakers actually came out with this phrase, which actually sat with me. Agile development processes are great at throwing away money iteratively. And I think his point here was, Agile's really good, but when badly implemented, you can have ideas which are intuitions from your product owner, internal stakeholders, which go or basically get developed, and then you get feedback from the end users and find out actually there was no value in that. So what we're really saying is about getting ideas validated as early as possible. And this is another way Agile can be badly implemented. Thinking of it as a set of rules rather than a mindset. So Agile is really a mindset where we need to be putting our customers first and focusing on customer and business value, and creating, as we've been discussed already, really quick feedback loops. And some of the other bits here, promoting collaboration and openness and transparency. So it's not a set of rules, it's not a way of avoiding documentation, it's not just about conducting your Agile ceremonies. Really need to think of it as a mindset. And the key really here is about getting a deep understanding of our customers, putting our customers at the heart of what we do, which in turn helps us better prioritize our feature set for our product roadmap. And Eric Ries is a great quote. The big question of our time is not can it be built, but should it be built? Technically, nowadays, most things are technically possible to be built, but really, should we be building it? Are we solving the right problem? Are our customers willing to use the solution we're building them? So how can we deliver better products? So these are sort of principles we've used to build our data-driven product development strategy. Developing products in collaboration. So within SSRN and Elsevier, we've got our product team, but we've also got our UX and engineering teams. And what we've started to do is really get the three teams involved right at the start of the ideation phase. So it's not just product working in isolation. We've got the UX and engineering contribution involved right from the ideation stage. And focus on customer value. So really, this is about making sure we have a validated roadmap. And also, when we think about our MVP, we don't go as far as developing a minimum viable product to wait for customer feedback. We're actually getting feedback before we build that MVP. And we're constantly revisiting that minimum viable product as well to make sure it's still relevant, still delivering value to our customers. Tackling risks as early as possible, so risks such as usability, technical feasibility, and one of the main points to get engineering involved as early as possible. There's no point in us trying to devise a solution if actually it's not going to be technically feasible. So really looking at getting engineering on board early to look at technical feasibility. And any sort of associated business risks as early as possible. And don't be scared to fail. I'm going to talk you through our experimentation approach. And really, it's not about creating experiments which are always successful. There's going to be failures in there, but learn and celebrate failure. And actually, we've found out from our approach, you learn a lot from failure, probably more from failure than you do from success. And using those principles, we think you can deliver winning products faster. But there is a thing here. Don't aim for perfection. Slow but perfect may be too late. So here what we're basically saying is we don't need to look at all the edge cases up front. So how have we applied this within SSRN at Elsevier? So we've basically built an experiment pipeline, and this is how it works. So we have our initial idea, which can be from internal stakeholders, the product team, UX engineering, or anyone else across the business, but also, more importantly, from our customers. So we've got an ideas portal where we have a lot of customers come in and submit ideas on how new features we can build and how we can improve existing features within our SSRN platform. So we have these ideas, and from that, we build a hypothesis, and this is really an outcome we believe. So the idea is basically a vision, but we've got no proof. So the hypothesis is an outcome we believe in, which we need to test and validate to get some data behind whether it's worth building this idea. And we also have associated metrics, and this is really about what does success look like, and what are we measuring? And this is when we talk about metrics, this is not just a quantitative, but it could be qualitative metrics and measures as well. And using those, we can then build an experiment, and this is basically a fast feedback loop to be able to test our hypothesis with real customers. And we've sort of got the majority of our experiments from ideation to running the experiment and getting the a stage where we're able to analyze the results should take 2 weeks or less, and we've sort of got into a rhythm of doing this. And currently we have about 10 to 15 experiments running in parallel as well. So once the experiment's complete, then we look at analysing the results and look at whether we need to carry out follow-up experiments, or potentially do we need to, if it's a failure, then that's fine, we've learned from that. Or maybe it's something that we can then, we've got enough data to verify that can be added to our product roadmap. And so Ian previously showed you a lean canvas. We've sort of adapted that. We've sort of come up with our own experiment canvas to create the key components which we need to analyse to look at sort of the results and the opportunities of our experiment and how effective the experiment's been as well, so we can use this to reflect back. So we've got some of the key components here. So we talk within this canvas, we've got the opportunity. So what's the problem we're trying to solve? What opportunity we're looking to seize? A hypothesis, as mentioned. Solution. So how are we looking to solve the problem and the opportunity presented? And the key ones here are the key success factors. So up front, how are we going to measure success? What key metrics are we trying to move? Is there an impact on our key KPIs? And the value proposition. So what's in it for the customer? Also, what's the business value of delivering the change? There may be associated business value as well. On this canvas, we also look at the different customer segments that the experiment's going to target. So which, is it going to target all the researchers on SSRN, or is it going to look at a particular set? Key resources and partners is quite important. So what are the dependencies in conducting this experiment? Is there dependencies on the development team? Do we need some development before we can do an experiment? And then we also capture the experiment details and post the experiment, the results, and the next steps we can look at. So Liz now is going to talk about how we use UX within the process as well. Without falling down the stairs, there you go.
Yeah, lovely, thank you. Okay, so I am the UX component in this process. So we have talked about, obviously, we want to be developing winning products, and that is very much premised on the basis of understanding what user needs are. And so the sweet spot is where the perceived value is, where user needs cross over with user expectations, and then we build it. So the Silicon Valley product group is one of the sort of the principal thoughts that we're following at the moment. Certainly in Elsevier, it's big business in Elsevier at the moment. And so Marty Kagan, the Silicon Valley product group author, has defined this: to create as much seamless experience of value as possible for the customer, the goal, which is the goal of design. And so that's where we consider particularly UX to be able to enable that delivery of perceived value. Okay, so what do we really mean by user experience? It's a phrase which is talked about an awful lot, and it's really heartening to hear that people have already talked a lot about user testing, and certainly user testing is one aspect of what is considered user experience. But I think the message that we want to talk about is that it's primarily about customer learning, and you can do that in a number of ways. So again, in general, if you want to position user research and the UX team in general as the resources that enable rapid and continuous customer learning, and it's that process that we have tried to, what we are integrating into our experiment pipeline. So how exactly are we doing that? Oh, a key thing that I just wanted to mention, because user experience is one of those phrases that people talk about a lot. And certainly I've heard this phrase mentioned in my organisation and actually elsewhere, and it's a bit of a cliche these days, I think, but it's definitely worth saying. I'm sure you may recognise this saying. It was attributed to Henry Ford if I'd asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. And actually, user experience is not about asking the customers. By all means, please speak to your customers, but don't necessarily call it user experience if you're asking them what they want. So, and the other quote comes from Margaret Mead. So what people say, what people do, and what they say they do are entirely different things. And again, that is a bit of a cliche, but it's nice to be reminded that actually user experience, if it's done effectively, is about observing people in context and about understanding the bigger picture of the tasks that they're doing and the context in which they're doing it. So I may well be preaching to the converted here, but certainly there are people in my organisation who still don't understand that. Okay, so what are we actually doing when we do user experience work on SSRN? So, and how does it work? How does it fit into this experiment pipeline? So we're doing a number of different types of user experience type activities, which start at, well, range from qualitative. I'm not sure how you use the pointer. Qualitative, which is very much about in-context understanding of the user, so actually going and seeing them and understanding the type of research work that they're doing, and we go and see them in their offices or wherever they're working, and then ranging through to the quantitative, which may be A/B testing, and it really depends on what point in the product development life cycle we're in. So if we've got a very defined design problem and we've got two solutions, then A/B testing clearly is the way to go. But if we're looking for more formative and understanding about users, then we definitely go for the user research. And we're trying to use all of these aspects. So certainly in the 2-week life cycle of development of ideas experiment pipeline, we are using a range of understanding of the user, which may have built up over months and be applied at a certain point, or it may actually be very, very quick turnaround user testing on a paper prototype, for example. Okay, so just to note also about combining UX with Agile. When I started out 20 years ago, we used to do 2 to 3 month in-context ethnographic studies. We're not doing that now. So, that process of discover, design, evaluate, which is user-centered, still very much is, you know, it's the philosophy we're following, but we're doing it in a much, much quicker cycle. Okay. So time is of the essence, especially when we look for very, very quick feedback. So one of the things that we have learnt and we very much put in place with our current team, with our experiments pipeline, is that you have to have certain things in it's a philosophy, it's definitely a cultural shift. So you have to have UX maturity of an organisation. So the mindset your managers, the CEO has to believe that UX should be part of the process and that it goes beyond A/B testing. That you have a strong leadership within UX, within a project team, and certainly we're fighting and arguing for making sure that users are involved and that we avoid making assumptions about users. So I think it's quite easy in an experiment process to say, we think the users might want this. Actually, we're trying to avoid that. The other thing is flexibility. So I guess one of the pitfalls of Agile is that, and certainly some of the teams do work in two-week sprints. When it comes to something like UX, it's great to have that flexibility to be able to work ahead. And I think that is a very, very key thing. Otherwise, someone like myself becomes a bit of a pixel pusher, which actually is not what UX really is. And I think the final thing that we have discovered, and that works really, really well, is that everybody's embedded, we're co-located, and we work together. So it's a discussion of ideas, and it's a very quick turnover. Okay, Kunal, I think, is going to tell you now about some of the very practical examples.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about two different experiments we've conducted just to illustrate some of the stuff we've talked about with the experiment pipeline. So the first experiment is concerned around this page on SSRN, which is known as the data integrity page. So an unsigned and anonymous user would normally hit this page due to abnormal level of downloads. So users can actually unsign, download papers for free. We've got various rules in terms of when they hit this page, when we want them to either sign in, create a free account, or download, or they can carry on downloading anonymously. So this version of the page actually has the three options, the three journeys as equally weighted options. So as a user, the easiest thing for me to do is click on download anonymously and carry on. From a product point of view, what we really want to do is one of the key KPIs for us is monthly active users, so really increasing the number of known users. And once we know more about the user, we can target them more as well. So really, we want to increase known user conversions on this page. So we wanted to conduct an experiment from using this page to see if we can increase known user conversions. So this was the experiment. So the idea here was, is there an opportunity to change the user experience on this page to increase sign-in and registrations and decrease anonymous downloads? And the hypothesis here was by changing the user experience to prioritize the preferred user journeys of registration and sign-in, we can increase known user conversions. And the metrics we're interested in measuring here were click-throughs on sign-ins and registrations, and also looking at what the click-throughs on anonymous downloads look like. So we did a simple experiment here. It was, in this case, an A/B test, so quite a quantitative experiment, to test two different designs, so our current design and then a refreshed UX design. And we A/B tested these until they reached statistical significance. So you can see here our page on the left, the old page, and our refreshed design on the right. So a number of things have changed here. Firstly, we had feedback from our customers that the text on the top was really confusing. Data alert, they're not sure why they've hit this page, have they done something wrong? So we really wanted to make it clear why people have hit this page, so what's happened. And then on the right, we've really prioritized the user journey of signing in and then a secondary user journey of registering, and really made download anonymously much lower impact journey. So we wanted to test these two. So we sent 50% of the users to the old version, 50% to the new. And you can see at the bottom here the results from Optimizely, which is what we used for the A/B testing. So we only needed to actually run this for 3 days until we reached statistical significance. And we saw over a 22% increase in people signing in, a reduction of 40% of people downloading anonymously, and then an increase of 76% of people actually clicking through to register and create a new account. So as you can see, it definitely increased known user conversion. So we put that version live. But also, when we analysed the results a bit more carefully, we saw the really interesting increase, much higher than expected increase in creating new accounts. And that's without having the main focus is actually sign-in here, not registering for a new account. So we thought it'd be interesting to do a follow-up experiment here. So we now have our current version. What happens if we put the focus on creating a new account? And again, we did an A/B test, sent 50% of the users to each different variation. And you can see the results here again at the bottom. We saw a 30% decrease in people signing in, which I guess is expected, considering we've taken the focus slightly off that. Another 15% drop in anonymous downloads, although we've actually changed nothing to do with that. And this was the big one, an 84% increase in people choosing to register. And that's from the version on the left to the right, not the original version. And then from those, additional metrics we put in at this stage of the experiment, 55% of people actually then went in and completed registration. So when we analysed this data, actually, even though sign-ins have dropped, we found out the overall known user conversions are massive in terms of the version of the right compared to the left. So we put that live. And we are looking at doing follow-up experiments with this page in terms of actually, you can see there's a drop-off in terms of people clicking to register and then actually completing registration. So there's various amount of experiments you can do. This is one we did actually at the start of this year, and this is just showing you what the results look like. So the orange version is the old variant, and the green is the sort of incarnation of the new variant. And we saw roughly an 880% increase in the amount of people registering as a result of the variation. So a really successful quantitative experiment. But obviously A/B testing is actually quite expensive, and it's not always suitable. So I'm going to give you a quick example of a much more qualitative experiment, and this was about capturing researchers' current ideas. So at the moment, researchers come onto SSRN to submit their working papers to us. It's normally when they've completed the paper, and so they may submit to SSRN at the same point as submitting for peer review for early feedback. So we wanted to find out, what about, are researchers interested in telling us what they're currently working on or what they're working on next? Sort of get an idea of what their current ideas are, basically. So the idea here was, can we capture what users are currently researching or working on, so this information can be showcased much earlier in the researcher lifecycle, and showcased potentially on the author profile to potentially attract collaborators, funding bodies and stuff. So the hypothesis here was, by emailing authors to ask them what they're currently working on, we'll harvest valuable information from the authors, which will be valuable to them and also other users or necessarily want to know about this information. And the metrics here are very much the quality and quantity of the current ideas we can harvest through email. So what would the response rate be like, but also what's the quality of these ideas? Is it ideas we want to showcase and surface on our platform? And here the experiment involved, it was very much an email campaign targeting authors within 3 different subject disciplines on SSRN. So we targeted authors within biology, a combination of economics and finance, and also law, through an email campaign, capturing their current ideas and then measuring the interactions as a result. And we used 3 different email templates we sort of sent each of the disciplines. So just worded slightly differently to also compare, whether certain text works better within certain disciplines. So what are you working on now? What are you writing next? Need help with an idea? So we conducted this about 2 months ago, so midsummer. And we got decent results. We had about a 5% hit rate, which is probably lower than we expected, but we did take the seasonal variation into account. But I think where this experiment really came to light was really the qualitative side of it. So when we showed the ideas to our publishing team, and they analysed them carefully, they found a lot of really good ideas, and the authors, the researchers, had spent a lot of time putting together these ideas. So there was definitely value in surfacing these onto their author profiles. So Liz then did some work on adapting the author profiles. So this is normally the view of the author, and what you can't see here, you basically see the author's contact details and below all the papers they've got on SSRN. But now we've added a new bit here which basically showcases their ideas. So originally, because it was a very quick, easy experiment, we manually got them to email back to the emails and then populated this new box. But going forward, we want to do more email campaigns where they directly can come onto this screen and populate their ideas directly, basically, from a click-through within the email. And we also want to do more follow-up experiments on the current idea strategy. So really, we've got them on the author profile, but how can we really make them more discoverable around the site? The author profile isn't something which everyone comes to, so how can we create maybe searching so users can search for, what papers people are working on, what research are people doing at the moment, and really that side of things, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so in a very practical way, we showed this concept to users, to a handful of users. Some were enthusiastic, some less so, and what we discovered was it really depended on which particular academic discipline they were researching in. So some are more happy to share their ideas, and others less so, and some of that came down to whether they were going to get funding before some of their friends got funding, so about how they felt about sharing very, very early stage ideas, and that's something that we took on board. So it's an option, they're not compelled to do it, and we certainly won't make them. So one of the other things that we wanted to say about this is that, yes, we're using in-person user testing. We're talking to people all over the world because SSRN has users all over the world, so we're trying to manage the cultural differences as well as all the other differences. And the other thing is that we are actively trying to collect more ideas. So one of the very, very simple thing to do is to, when you put up a new design, is identify that it's a new design and encourage people to respond online as well as in person as well. And so those ideas go directly into our ideas database and then will be churned through as we're discussing as a product team and in a development team whether we think that that's going to work or not, in terms of whether we can do it. I think the next screen. So this is just an example of our user testing. And so one of the things I just wanted to add, actually, that with this sort of experimentation canvas, that it is, so from as a user experience professional, what I would say that always what you're trying to do in user experience is not only look at individual designs, you're trying to create a coherent, contextualized experience, not just of individual aspects of a product, but the whole product. And there is a little bit of a tension between, the focus on developing maybe very, very small but quickly in certain areas of a particular product or service like SSRN, but it's my job to also, but also the product team's job, but I'm very aware of it's also my need to make sure that there's a coherent user experience. And I think the experiment, you just need to be mindful of that when you're running lots of little experiments, that there is also a whole to consider.
Brilliant. Thanks, Liz. And just to summarise, really, the key concepts, key principles we've gone through here. So really our approach is really about product, UX and engineering collaboration from the onset, from the ideation phase. Doing these experiments to get fast user feedback. So almost doing the minimum and the cheapest solution we can to get feedback, get some data back, to either conduct further follow-up experiments, or if we know that an idea has just not got any data backing or any value to the customer, then learn. And continuous customer learning. So as we're doing and learning more about the customer, as we're doing all these experiments, we're just learning. Any questions?
How do we get there?
Hi, I was just wondering whether this still feels quite niche within your organisation, that you guys are almost at the vanguard within the organisation, or is this something that is now feeling like it's got traction, and where are you on that journey?
So earlier this year, they basically shipped all the product people in research products in Elsevier onto a Silicon Valley product group course in Amsterdam, and really drill this into them. And this has got buy-in right from the top of the research products division. So actually, the guys at Mendeley are doing similar to us as well. We're out presenting, doing a similar talk around Elsevier. So we are one of the pioneers, but I think it's actually getting good buy-in across the rest of research products. So
it depends which bit of the organisation you're in, and some of it. I mean, some of it's old hat as far as I'm concerned, because user-centred design. This is what the principle of user-centred design is. It's just done maybe slightly more quickly, but great. It's great that people are beginning to talk about it a lot more in our organisation.
Yeah, research products, yes. The rest of the organisation, maybe not yet.
You spoke about having an ideas board and collecting ideas internally and externally. How do you choose an idea to then progress down your kind of system?
So, in conjunction with this collaboration approach, we meet as a product UX engineering collective on a weekly basis to go through the ideas board and then look at which ideas we want to take forward into experimentation. So I think it depends on what's hot at the time, what we've really potentially what we can easily experiment at the time as well, maybe areas we're looking at at the time as well, and some experiments may then go down into future consideration.
I suppose my experience with that is you end up putting all the big things that could have high reward to the side because they're going to take a lot of effort to think about and test. So do you kind of come across that?
Yeah, we have, and potentially when we have a big thing, then potentially it's about breaking it down into smaller chunks that we can experiment with.
So maybe a thing that we need to talk about is that SSRN as a platform has got big things going on. I mean, it's been re-platforming at the same time. So we've actually got a double, very simply, 2 tracks going on. So we've got discovery team and then we've got the re-platforming. So things like search are being re-platformed, which is a big thing. But we're actually, so some of the things that we're looking at is how we can incrementally update and improve search whilst it's being re-platformed.
And you split that into 2 teams?
There's lots of crossover. I work on both.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. How does the idea of a more macro level product roadmap fit into this thinking? Do you have product roadmaps for these sort of things? Or is
We
it
do.
all kind of done on a very 2-week kind of...
So we've, following on from what Liz said, we've essentially got 2 product roadmaps. So there's 2 different things going on with SSRN post-acquisition. So SSRN was acquired by Elsevier about a year ago. And one of the big pieces of work is re-platforming it from a really old architecture to a new architecture. So there's a team working on that. And that's a pretty static roadmap. So we know they're working on search at the moment. They'll be working on submission next. And then the other side of things is really about our ongoing feature roadmap, developing new features, improving current features, and we have a roadmap. I mean, both teams work in fortnightly sprint cycles, but really we're we call ourselves Scrum Band because we're using a 2-week sprint cycle almost like a time box, but really we work more in a Kanban manner. We don't wait till the end of a sprint to change stuff around. We like to respond quickly if stuff needs to be complete. We're trying to move into a model of continuous deployment as well. So we use this, we use sort of the 2-week window as a time box to check in, at product level as well. But yeah, we have basically in essence 2 roadmaps, and this approach really fits in with the new feature development roadmap.
Do you have specific user bases for different products? You said you have like 15 or 20 different projects going on.
So we've got about 15 different experiments going on at once, targeting different user segments. Yes, so some of them are targeting particular authors. We've got other experiments to do with, we've got different bits of our product. So we've got an experiment to do with institutional users who basically, there's a part of our product called a research RPS, which is for institutions to basically create their own pages to showcase their research. So we've got some stuff working with the institutional admins on what analytics they want to see, according to their research. So yeah, there are slightly different segments of users that we look at.
Very much so, and we've spent time building up profiles and understanding.
Personas.
So, for example, one of the big areas that we still have to tackle is submission process, which obviously has quite a large back-end processing component. So, but what we're doing is breaking it down and understanding, so what are the back-end processors doing when they're, checking papers and looking at various other components that they need to okay submission.
Any other questions? And there's our emails and LinkedIn if any of you guys want to talk more about this. Thanks.
Okay.